So I hope this lighting is okay. I just came from my first ever virtual wedding on Zoom, and it inspired me to talk about, you know, being creative to find human connection and celebrating positive things online, which is so important to have that sense of human connection to ward off, loneliness, to stay sane for our mental health in these times. And this was one of the most beautiful weddings I've been to. It was my college roommate, and it was the bride and the groom. They were together physically, obviously, but all the people who participated in the ceremony, including their parents and siblings and guests like me, were thousands of miles away. And it was still a great ceremony. And their parents, their siblings, and cousins had parts in the ceremony, and of course the clergy. But all of those people were thousands of miles away, and it was still great. It was a thoughtful ceremony. It was just really beautiful, seeing the different rituals from both sides. And they say, what do they say? Necessity is the mother of invention. So in these times, we got to be creative in finding community online. I made a virtual toast. They asked during the reception when the bride and groom cut their cupcake, that all the guests get out their desserts. So I had cookies and cream Nadamu dairy-free ice cream, which I have a million dietary restrictions, so I love this ice cream Nadamu. I'll post a link in the description box. And the flower girl, who was my friend's niece, she obviously couldn't be there personally, the little girl, so she walked down the corridor in her home, which was so cute. And in the ride, they thanked the guests. They said, "We'd like to thank all of our out-of-town guests," which is every single one of you. And one of the things about these rituals going online is that sometimes it allows for more people to be present than there would be if we had the in-person ceremony due to other obstacles, practically speaking. And it doesn't have to be a wedding, right, to be a positive online celebration. So I've thrown 7 or 8 New Year's Eve online parties during Twilight Zone's marathon. They have this iconic marathon every year. It's usually 48 hours. And so I started this around 2013 because the pain of endometriosis, the fatigue, myasthenia gravis, the sleep issues with bipolar disorder, I couldn't do the traditional New Year's Eve things that people do. And I didn't know what it was going to become. Sometimes we've had like 200 guests at a party one year. And the daughter of the creator of the Twilight Zone came, Anne Serling, the daughter of Rod Serling, which was awesome. And one thing we do, so we post the episodes of Twilight Zone on Facebook and we leave comments. And one thing we do, we have a virtual potluck. And basically we start a thread and people post pictures of the food they're eating. And then we give the dishes cute nicknames with puns related to the Twilight Zone. And last year I was in the hospital unplanned for an infection in my lungs and chest. And it was obviously awful. And, for anyone, so it was really bad. And I was released late New Year's Eve. And so by the time I got home, almost half the marathon was over. And I saw on Facebook people's comments. Some of them, they're not active on Facebook. They just come once a year for the Twilight Zone marathon. That's why they keep their account. And people were saying, "I haven't heard from Jessica. Does anybody know where she is?" And people started saying, "Oh, I feel bad. I haven't heard from her." And then they're worried, but they decided they should start the party. We should keep the tradition going. And they did that in my absence. And I was deeply touched by that. And I came home in time to catch like 40% of the marathon. So good news, we can celebrate milestones. They may not be big for other people, but they could be big for us. Last week, I caught up with one of my former students who I had a long time ago. And I was just thinking, with COVID, we would always try to schedule appointments to see each other in person. And there's the busyness of life, although we'd make it work. And catching up on Zoom, this kind of stuff, like that human connection, right, is so important. Rates of depression and anxiety are rising, and as we deal with new realities. So, last year I was invited to attend this event for a cause that's important to me. I fight for different causes, including healthcare, fighting for everyone to have healthcare, just as one example. And I thought the webinar I was attending was a lecture. I was like, okay, cool. I try to support in every way, so I'll attend a lecture. And it was a tweet live storm, and so we were sending out these tweets to inform the public. And usually when you do something like that, you don't see the other person's face. It's just people sending out tweets, liking them and retweeting them. And I was surprised there wasn't a lecture. Instead, somebody played music and everybody could see everybody's faces while we were tweeting on our computers or our phones. And that's one of the things that kept me sane this week. It was that human connection that I didn't even expect. So the person who was hosting it, I haven't seen her since, I don't know how long, like since late last December. And so normally we would probably meet in person to do this, but it made me feel so good it's like a coping mechanism, right? For stress and depression, to maintain those human connections. And it was like back in the day when you had homework to do or something important to work on, maybe you'd go to Barnes and Noble with a friend. And even though you weren't working on the same thing, you would sit at the cafe and you would do your work together. And then like you would browse occasionally, look at the CDs, get something from Starbucks. And that's kind of what it was, except it was we all on a screen. And then one of the members was playing music, like the DJ. And that whole thing made me feel less alone. And sometimes it requires being vulnerable and reaching out to people. So like a friend on Twitter, I said, I was just not feeling well. And it would be nice to have these conversations face to face. And so we met up on Zoom face to face, and it was really nice. And the one thing I've noticed is that when you're honest with people, and sometimes you ask, hey, could we meet up on Zoom or whatever? What I've discovered is that a lot of people are in the same boat. They say, oh my gosh, this was so nice. Can we do this again? Because a lot of people aren't, having those human interactions. So I just encourage you to be creative, whether it's virtual potlucks, virtual parties. There's, I know people who host, I forgot the name of the room, but where you can watch a TV show together, binge a TV show together. And I know people who do that. So whatever it is you do, try to maintain human connections in this difficult time. I hope everybody stays safe physically, mentally, and that we're not alone, that we don't feel isolated in these difficult times. It can get lonely, but let's try to maintain human connections. And let me know what you think. I've done videos on coping mechanisms before. I called it What's Your Top 10? I'll post a link to that in the description box. And the ice cream I ate, cookies and cream, that's my favorite flavor. And I was surprised to find a brand I could actually eat cookies and cream with, not a moo. So if you have a million dietary restrictions and you can't have dairy and non-GMO, all that vegan stuff like me, it's really cool. So what is this? Oh, somebody said I missed having this. Okay. So yeah. So I forgot to mention, right? So I mentioned this once before. So we have this thing every Wednesday night on Twitter, hosted by Dawn M. Gibson. It's called #SpoonieChat. So all you need is a Twitter account. And basically, it's an online community for people with chronic illnesses and disabilities. We share tips for surviving, or we just have this bond of knowing that you're not the only one. So it's called #SpoonieChat. I'll post a link below in the description box on how to set up a Twitter account if you don't have one. And again, it's Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern time, which is 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. So if you need a friend, if you need to reach out to people, if nobody in your life really gets it, I encourage you to join this great community that's been thriving for 7 years on Twitter on Wednesday nights, #SpoonieChat. I hope people are staying safe in these times. I hope you have at least one thing to look forward to every day. Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a good weekend. Bye.